Now, 105 girls and a boy have been handed over to the federal government by the theatre commander, Major General Rogers Nicholas.
And as news broke that the first set of schoolgirls abducted from Dapchi in Yobe State have been released by Boko Haram, the town was thrown into a jubilant mood. A Yobe State correspondent, Michael Oshoma, now reports.
This morning, we see an amazing thing. The militant draws the girls of Dapchi on our presence. That's why I'm very, very happy. I feel a joy in my heart.
Parents of the adopted Dapchi schoolgirls had been hinted that the insurgents would bring the girls to the town on this fateful day. Our camera captured some children and parents running for their dear lives, thinking the arrival of the fighters was a bad omen. These are some of the released girls. According to one of the girls, they were dropped at Jumbam village by the insurgents before proceeding to Dapchi community. Khadija Grima is among the released girls. She narrates her audio.
When they took us from the school, we were seated thinking about what we could eat. Then we heard a gunshot. Everybody was confused, running helter-skelter. They then called to us and asked us to come to the school gate. We went to the gate. They then called Babangida, a member of the abducting group, to bring a vehicle. They packed us into the car and asked us who are those fasting. Then they gave us maltina, meat, water, and kuli-kuli.
These two men were among the officials that received the insurgents when they arrived at Dapchi community.
They greet us, they shake us, they snap pictures with us, they ask us to not run away, and they tell us that do not give your daughters to those army because they will say that they are the one who will capture them.
This woman fainted when she noticed her daughter was not among those released by the terrorist group. Affected parents, loved ones, well-wishers, among others, applauded the federal government for the negotiation that led to their release.
We cannot say anything other than to say thank you to those who have means or access to negotiate with these people. Or we can even thank the militant for releasing the girl.
The insurgents, after releasing the girls, admonished them never to go back to Western education. This young man says he witnessed the release.
They brought the guests this early morning, telling the general public that they should not allow their guests to go back to the Western education system because what they did is not terrorism rather than teaching of Islamic rights. Apart from that, the girls we have brought with the absence of security personnel. I don't know whether they are closed, they refuse to go or something like that. But there they drop the girls and find their way, telling the general public that the girls should not go back to the schools. After some discussion with the guests we are told that I asked some of the guests that will they go back to school. They say no. Why? They were urged, and the Boko Haram told them that they should not go back to school because if they dare go back to school, if they abducted them, they will not be released anymore.
The release of the girls would remain a memorable day for Dapchi town, Yobe State government, and Nigeria in general. Michael Oshoma, TVC News, Dapchi, Yobe State.
The parents of the girls are happy, just as Nigerians. Of course, some parents that the girls didn't come back are still sad. Anyway, we have an activist, social commentator, member of the Bring Back Our Girls group, Habiba Balogun, joining us now. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Morning.
And of course, with us in the studio as well is a security consultant, Colonel Hassan Stan Labo, retired. Good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Morning, my dear.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, the girls are back. First off, you heard what one of the residents there said about snapping pictures with the members of the Boko Haram group that dropped the girls. With the Boko Haram that the soldiers have been fighting in Nigeria, are you not suspicious in any way?
Suspicious over what?
That they gathered the people, they stayed there and chatted with them for a period of time, and then even snapped pictures with some of them after releasing the girls.
I want you to understand that as part of the negotiations, there was an operational pause. Besides, there was what we call cleared routes in the military. All right? And this was to facilitate the return of the girls. If the foot soldiers on the side of the Boko Haram, of course, are excited to want to have few photographs with you and so on, you cannot say no. And besides, mind you, on our own side too, there was so much excitement, all right? And if people had their what's it called, their phones with them, they could always want to pick 1 or 2 snapshots and so on. And there was enough freedom of action because of the absence of troops due to the operational pause that was already in place. All troops had been cleared away. And hope you know that even if the dropping of these girls had been done even by the international community or any of the international platforms, be it Red Cross or be it whatever anyway, there would have been an operational pause, there would have been a cleared route. If you cast your mind back to the way the last one did happen, when those choppers were dropping those kids, no soldier was around. That is usually part of the terms of agreement, yes.
All right, Habiba, let me come to you on this. The message from Boko Haram to Dapchi villagers and the parents of the girls is quite disturbing to a great extent. When you say, we don't want to see these girls in school again, go tell your parents and go tell your daughters, don't go back to school again. What are the implications of this?
I don't see any implication.
All right.
Boko Haram have told us that their name is Western education is bad. Okay, they have their philosophy, and it seems as if they are going back to their core philosophy. They are trying to preach their ideology once again that Shekau has departed from with all his suicide bombings and all the rest of it. We know that ideology. So if somebody tells you, okay, please don't go to school, you want to be a doctor, don't go to school and be a doctor, okay? Stay where you are and be struggling for life, just the way your parents and your grandparents and other people around you. It's your choice. But do they want the best for you?
Okay.
So it's not the message. For me, there's no implication. The implication is, if we want our children to be educated, boys and girls, don't forget Boko Haram kidnaps boys and makes them child soldiers. We have to make sure that they are in secure facilities, that they are safe from any attacks.
Okay, let me come in here. Some of the parents of those people, not even those people from that region, yes, especially over the years, had been, implored, they were begged to allow their female children especially to go to school. Eventually, they are gradually allowing them, and this happens. Yes. Recall that some of the girls, the Dapchi girls that escaped abduction, said that one of them said that she would never go to school again, just the shock of, escaping from the abductors. And now these girls got a warning. They were not implored. They got a warning that if they go back, they could be kidnapped and then would never be returned to their parents again. And you're saying that there's no implication to this in any way against the education for the girl child.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying no implication to the statement from Boko Haram. Okay. Of course there's an implication. If my child is in a school, in an area that is unsafe, I'm not sending my child to school. And if I'm a child who managed to escape abduction, or I was abducted and released from my school, and the environment has not changed, has not become safe, of course I'm not going to school. Sure. It's going to have a horrific implication. The whole insecurity has already had a horrific implication in the Northeast. I hope you know that there's a whole generation already. How long has this insurgency been going on? There's a whole generation already that have missed school, boys and girls. It has terrible implications. And clearly now, when we thought the schools were safer, they have shown us that they can come and pick us up. So again, in that area, people are going to say, oh, if I thought it was safe to send my child back to school, it's not safe to send my child back to school. So as individuals, as parents, as communities, as state governments, there's an implication for us. But when you say what's the implication of Boko Haram warning them, for me, that's nonsense. We're not going to listen to people with a flawed and incorrect ideology, by the way. Okay? The first word in the Quran is read. The first word in the Quran is read. So when they say people don't educate, where does Western education come from? A lot of it comes from Arabic and education. Where did the advances in the Renaissance come from? A lot of it came from Islamic scholarship. So these people don't know what they're talking about. We cannot allow the ignorant to come and instruct us on what to do. And we all know that education is a route out of poverty. And we know that poverty is the cause of Boko Haram. Poverty and mismanagement, poor governance. So look, let's focus on the problems or the causes. Let's focus on the problems. Let's focus on the solutions. And let's not focus on what these people are saying. They only have the right, we've given them the opportunity to say this because we've given them a cleared route to come. That is why they can come and stand and say, don't go back to school. If we're in control of our security in this country, they will not have a chance to say that. Who will give them that right? And parents in the Northeast, we're telling you, we are going to fight for a government that will keep your children safe in school. And when they go to school, they're going to get a quality education in that school.
I like your submission, and certainly it is somewhere we're going to take Colonel from when we come back, because he has said that he agrees with the fact that Boko Haram has been degraded to a great extent, and here we are negotiating and so on. But we'll come back to this. Let's take a break for the news update, and we will come back. It's time for the news update, and Fade Shola Shotinwa is going to take us there right now. Fade, is all yours now.
Indeed it is. On the news this hour, the first set of schoolgirls abducted from Dapchi in Yobe State have been released by Boko Haram. 105 girls and a boy have been handed over to the federal government by the theatre commander, Major General Rogers. Parents, loved ones, well-wishers, amongst others, have applauded the federal government for the negotiation which led to the girls' release. And the federal government says the girls were released unconditionally, but a security analyst is worried abduction may become an industry in Nigeria following government's known approach of negotiating the release of abductees. Kabiru Adamu says the most valuable approach should be prevention and canvasses a systemic approach in ensuring schools are safe. Other stories now: 12 soldiers have been killed after gunmen attacked a military base in Birnin Gwori, local government area of Kaduna State. The attack struck late Tuesday night at a time the soldiers were in town to protect contractors working on a new road linking Zamfara and Kaduna states. In his condolence message, the Kaduna State Governor, Nasiru El-Rufai, prayed for the repose of the souls of the deceased and said banditry will be defeated. And barring any last-minute changes, the National Assembly will pass the 2018 budget on April the 24th. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, made this known at the start of the House proceedings on Wednesday. Dogara also said the committees of the House are expected to turn in their reports 5 days before the D-Day. The budget document was presented to the National Assembly in November last year by President Muhammadu Buhari. The Senate on Wednesday passed a resolution to set up an endowment fund for senators who die in active service in order to provide for the welfare of the families they leave behind. The resolution followed a valedictory session in honor of their late colleague, Ali Wakili, who died in Abuja on Saturday. The Senate also resolved to liaise with the House of Representatives to establish a National Assembly museum and archives to immortalize members appropriately. The upper chamber is also considering naming committees and hearing rooms after senators. Leaders from 44 African countries have signed an agreement to form a $2.5 trillion continental free trade zone. Nigeria and South Africa, the continent's largest economies, were however absent. Deliberations on the free trade zone began in 2015 and was originally projected to capture 55 countries. At the African Union Summit in Kigali, Rwanda, Paul Kagame, the host president, declared the meeting a success after initial negotiations were concluded. President Muhammadu Buhari had been initially scheduled to attend the summit and sign the agreement after the Federal Executive Council gave its approval at its March the 14th meeting. The trip was, however, cancelled on Sunday, March the 18th, and the presidency gave no reasons for the development. On his part, Cyril Ramaphosa, the South African president, said his country will join the agreement when the necessary legal processes are concluded. And that's the news this hour. I'm Fade Shola Shotinwa. Back to Mike and Azizat.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Fade, for the updates there. All right, let's get back to our discussion. It is no longer news that 105 girls kidnapped, students kidnapped from Dapchi in Yobe State in the northeast of Nigeria have been released by Boko Haram. And that's what we've been talking about. All the papers in Nigeria today have been certainly awash with all of this news and updates and implications of what's going on. And we have with us in the studio Colonel Hassan Stanlabo, security consultant, discussing this with us. We also have a member of the Bring Back Our Girls group, Habiba Balogun, with us in the studio. Now, Colonel, let me come to you on this. I remember we've talked so many times on the capacity of the Nigerian military, no doubt. And we have said the statement by the government and the military that Boko Haram has been degraded, and certainly we're just seeing the last kicks of a dying horse and so on. But in that frame, we still have and see elements of Boko Haram carry out activities as they carried out in the days of their peak. So how do we reconcile the concept of Boko Haram being degraded and their ability and capacity? We just talked about 11 soldiers killed by, anyway, they call them banditry, but they're bandits rather, but then they're soldiers, Nigerian soldiers, gallant Nigerian soldiers.
I want us to always bear in mind that when we talk about Boko Haram, we're not looking at an isolated force with no external relationship with some other terrorist groups all over there. We've all heard about their relationship with ISIS and so on, okay? And once in a while, we expect some measure of support that may enable them carry out some lines of action that will make us wonder, what is happening? I thought we have done this, and so on. I would always liken the situation with Boko Haram. I would always want to look at it like a snake whose head has been cut off, and the entire body is now dancing violently, creating all sorts of damages it could. You watching from a distance, you know it's only a matter of time. The snake will die off. But then it can still carry out some effective damage, so you just stay clear. In our own case, that staying clear is what level of caution are we exercising? What level of protection are we bringing to bear on our schools and other soft targets? Terrorists watch out for opportunities, and when you give them the opportunities, they seize it instantly. Terrorists live with us in communities, and that's why in most cases the definition of terrorism slightly differs from the definition of insurgents. Terrorism, that will always tell you, is a variant, okay, of asymmetric conflict embedded in communities. That is, they live with you. So they are there watching. They have moved those troops away from Dapchi school. We can move in now. And they moved in. So you must always be on your guard. Like somebody did ask me yesterday, so what are we going to do now to protect all these other schools and so on? And I kept saying, look, we have to relocate all these children in schools that fall within the fringes, our borders with all these North African countries. I hope you know some of these countries are failed nations. We don't have to argue it. I mean, look at them. Some of them are failed nations, okay?
But Nigeria is tagged as a failed nation too in one
well,
index.
they are
anyway,
going, all the indices you might
Nigeria
use to qualify them as failed nations. Nigeria has all of them, if not more.
I agree with you, sir. I agree with you. I don't want to contest that. We are looking at how we can resolve our own issues.
All right.
Relocate these kids from these schools, move them maybe to the state capitals, be it Maiduguri or whichever the state is. Expand the facilities in the schools in the state capitals and accommodate these children. I no longer want to buy this idea of, oh, we are going to fortify the schools, or we are going to fortify the schools with what? We have manpower issues in the military. We have manpower issues in the police. Okay? Don't talk of sending NSCDC or what do we call them?
But they've been sent already.
Talk now.
But they've been sent.
Those that should listen are listening now. I don't see what those guys are going there to do. If regular soldiers, we don't have enough strength to protect those places, Please don't just waste additional lives. Okay? How many of these NSCDC guys are armed? How many weapons do they even have in their possession? What is the quality of the weapons they have? There are certain things we don't have to say on air. So the point I'm making is that save the lives of these children now, relocate them immediately. Let's begin to take some drastic actions. So when these guys come to these schools, they meet empty schools. Until the whole situation dials down, then we'll see how we can gradually send these kids back, which might take 1, 2, 3 years before we are convinced that, okay, I think these girls can now go back. Okay. In the case of terrorism, my dear, let's not be in a haste to pull out of terrorism, unless you want me to sit here and tell you all sorts of lies, which I don't see why I should. If terrorism was that easy to pull out, the Americans would have pulled out of Afghanistan since. They've been there for about 2, 3 decades now, wasting or spending their resources there. They are not happy to be there. Terrorism takes time to die off. Takes time, and it thrives on things like insurgency. So if we're able to take care of the insurgent aspect of it, gradually terrorism will die away.
Okay, let me come to you now. But from what the Colonel just said, the suggestion he made about relocating the schools to make at least, you know, accept the situation, relocate the schools for now. But what are the implications, first off, for the girl child that the parents, maybe, for example, already told that, okay, you can go to school for 2, 3 hours and then you go and sell, or you understand the scenario I'm trying to paint. Now, if you relocate entirely, the funds for the parents, even for the parents of boys in that region, the funds for them to relocate, do they relocate with their children to the capital? Do all these people, village people in different communities now in Borno State, relocate to Maiduguri? Can they be accommodated? And then the implications of that, because the kind of already told us that terrorism is very difficult, and we understand that. Infiltration happens every time, meaning that a Boko Haram member could infiltrate the villages and relocate with them to the capital. The implications of this really are.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to just say that bring back our girls, the Chibok parents, Dapchi parents, we are all so happy that these girls are back. And I don't like to use the word commend. I just want to say thank you to the government.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay? We know in life bad things happen. What we are just asking you for is that when bad things happen to us, your children, your citizens, help us. And they have responded. We're very happy with that. To go back to your question about relocation, the Safe Schools Initiative was set up in 2014. It had certain parameters that they set out, actions to be taken. One of those actions to be taken was cluster schools. It doesn't have to be always in the state capital, but they were saying cluster schools in the larger towns, give the security forces fewer targets to secure, fewer areas to secure, and things like that, okay? So relocating children to Maiduguri, we know that now. It's going to be middle class, whatever you categorize as middle class, who can decide, I can afford for my children not to be helping me in the house or helping me in the farm or helping me in the business. Okay? Those are the ones who can afford to send their children away to boarding school. We're talking about poverty. Poor people need their children to survive, to eat. Okay? And again, poor people are not, who are they going to hand their children to? Strangers? Where? In that place, den of iniquity. You know, they think of all big cities as den of iniquities, you know? Yeah. So the implication is there are lots of children who, until the school, we can have schools open all over, good coverage of schools in communities, there are going to be lots of children out of school. So any responsible government will start thinking, okay, what do we do in that kind of situation? There are options. There are many options to educate children in the home. There's homeschooling. You can go back to, you know, in our ancient African traditions, we always educated we didn't necessarily educate them in the way the English do, but we always educated our children in our communities, in our villages. Okay, we might have to resuscitate some of our traditional means of educating our children. It might mean they don't learn algebra and English, but they will be educated. When they need to learn those things, they can pick them up very, very quickly. So what we want to see our government doing is coming up with strategies, engaging, consulting communities. What can we do to make sure that we don't deny our children of a future, of a good life in the future, the better life than you, which is what every parent wants to give their children. So yes, people will relocate. People have already migrated to Maiduguri. Most of Borno State is now in Maiduguri, yes or no? People will continue migrating, but there are some people who cannot leave. And those people who cannot leave, very few of them will be able to send their children off. We are trying to get scholarships for children. We are trying to get schools in other parts of Nigeria to offer spaces to place children. There are many things that we are doing to support each other. Even the Chibok parents, you know, they were in Dapchi town when the girls were returned. They went there on a solidarity visit to encourage them, share experiences, tell them how to cope, and they were there witnessing those children come back, the Dapchi children come back. In less than 24 days, it will be 4 years since their own children have been in captivity. So we're happy, the Chibok parents are also happy, but government knows what to do, and if it doesn't know what to do, it should consult the people on the ground. There's wisdom on the ground.
Exactly. There are people
even
who
in
know
the
this
communities.
thing.
There's wisdom on the
there
ground.
There are lots of Nigerians
Let's decide
consulting.
together how we're going to respond and
I
how
agree
to
with
cope.
you. There are lots of Nigerians consulting for agencies, for military, for all sorts of things across the world.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to the know-how, we certainly believe that Nigerians have what it takes when it comes to knowledge and skill. Now, Colonel, let me come to you. When it comes to the issue of we didn't give ransom, we only just negotiated, and the girls are back. Not so many Nigerians are buying that story from the federal government. What kind of circumstance will there be just negotiation and then somehow they became so magnanimous to return girls they captured or kidnapped for whatever reason they did?
Yeah, I know how difficult it will be to buy into that story of, look, there were no ransoms, there was no this, no that, and so on. Okay, and when you give the entire thing a proper look, a critical, look into the entire scenario that played out, you would tell yourself, no, there is no how these guys could part away with these girls without something. Because in the first place, why did they pick them up?
Exactly.
Personally, I believe they picked them up because they felt they could make something out of it. 2, I felt they picked them up because they probably belonged to one of those factions that did not benefit from the first one. And finally, they picked them up because they were becoming stranded. Financially, logistics was suffering, and so many other things. So there was a need for reinforcement, financially or whatever. That is one. But I might shock you if I tell you that, look, I am not too bothered about whatever we gave out to them, even if it is half of this country. And I will tell you, what is it have we given out to them that our politicians have not stolen? And what it is we are refusing, or we would refuse to give out to them and keep, that you think will benefit us, that politicians...
Well, there is the fear.
Excuse me, my dear, that politicians will still not steal. So give it out to them and let's get our girls back. Simple.
Okay.
So I'm not really bothered. In fact, I'm not too interested in the story of what was given. You know the aspect I'm interested in? Oh, thank God these girls are here. Thank you, government, for making all the moves. I don't want to know what went into the moves, but the girls are here.
Okay, there is the fear, and many are saying it. They've said it many times when the government negotiated with the Boko Haram on the Chibok schoolgirls' release, that when you negotiate, and it's usually financial agreement, it means that you are refunding Boko Haram. The Boko Haram, you already told us that it has been frustrated and it has been degraded. And of course, you are ceded to it that they could be, be lacking funds. And by negotiating and getting money, for example, maybe a quarter of Nigeria's wealth, for example, it means that they'll be able to afford a lot of weapons, a lot of explosives to
save your breath. I understand you, my dear.
Again.
Let me pick it up from there. I understand you. You forced yourself into a situation where you cannot pull out, where you have become desperate to a point where you are always saying, mention it and I give you. So in the first place, you could have made sure it never happened. How come we never learned our lessons from Chibok?
Thank you.
That is a big question. Once you allow it to happen, I hope you know the best option is to go negotiate, not even military action, to rescue them. Because if you go by military action to rescue them, you might not get them complete. Even the Israelis, who are the best in rescue actions, will advise you, look, it may not come out 100%.
Even the U.S. had to negotiate to get back.
And then the issue of whether ransom or no ransom. Look, keep some of these theories and Western whatever aside, because even the same individuals who tell you don't pay ransom, go underneath to pay ransom. I wish I had come in here with a list I have, right from the Israeli war 1967 and so on and so forth, and even the lines of action carried out by the US government in Afghanistan in pulling out certain abducted soldiers and so on, and the ransoms they are paying. I have everything well documented. I just forgot to bring it. I would have read it all out to you. And then, if what has happened were to be with the Israelis, those 5 girls that were buried, we would be ready to give out something to exhume their body and bring them home. Because to the Israelis, they are Jews and they must come back home. Yeah. But do we have such mentality in Nigeria? Can we now say, where are those 5 dead bodies? Where are the graves? Can you assist us? We need them.
I'd like to also respond to that question about the kidnapping industry. Kidnapping is already an industry in Nigeria. So we need to tackle that. We need to tackle that industry. It's not just with for Boko Haram. All over, every part of Nigeria, there's people they kidnap for 5,000 naira, and people they are kidnapping for 40 million naira. We know about it. After the Chibok girls were kidnapped, the CBN governor's wife was kidnapped. Many other people's families, Jonathan's family members were kidnapped. Yeah. Kidnapping is already an industry in Nigeria. So please, nobody should say paying ransom to recover school children in government schools.
Human beings.
Is when you should decide not to pay ransom. But paying ransom